Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the most recent webinar from the EACA on cash flow management with our presenter today, Dan Green of Nolan Advisory Services. As you may know, we've had previous sessions in the webcast series on safety training app from the folks at Employco. We had a session on withdrawal liability from Will Daniels with Lanier Mutual, and we had a program on our new purchasing program where members can buy supplies, equipment, and tools at a discount through our new purchasing program. Today's session is on cash flow management, as I said, with Dan Green of Nolan Advisory Services. Nolan Advisory Services is a management advisory firm focused on helping businesses in the exhibition and event marketing space solve the complex challenges and decisions that are facing their company today. None more critical than managing cash flow. So with that, let me turn over the presentation to Dan Green with Nolan Advisory Services. Dan, thanks for being here.
Hi, Jim, and thank you for allowing me to share some thoughts on cash flow management to your members. And my hope is that each of your members that are listening to the program leave with at least one new idea to help accomplish their business goals. Now, being in the trade show industry for as long as I have, or as long as your members have, I will say that managing cash for a service or rental company or a trucking company is one of the hardest tasks there is. And it's definitely not as fun as sales, design, or setting up a 50 by 80 at CES inside of 4 days. But cash flow management will make or break your business and determine the rate at which your company can grow. Now, cash flow management is the most important aspect of an EAC's growth strategy. And before we get into the nuts and bolts of cash flows in the various EAC businesses, let me say a few things about strategy in general. Developing a strategic framework for an EAC resulting in stronger cash flows shouldn't be an overwhelming process. Implementing cash flow strategies in your service business is going to allow owners and managers to understand, analyze, and employ the activities that have been shown to generate greater returns in the business. And strategic management is about running the total business enterprise. It seeks to understand the challenges in your environment, the direction in which your management intends to bring the business, and developing the strategic plans for getting the enterprise moving in the intended direction. And this is going to help you grow your company quickly and successfully. Now, word of caution that if your managers are unable to meet the challenges that surround them now, they probably can't offer much hope in handling greater challenges in the future. Now, why is cash such a powerful measurement? Business owners love absolutes with regards to performance metrics. And one of the only absolute measures in business is cash. And how we conserve, manage, and invest that cash is going to determine the future of our companies. Why cash? Because cash is a fact, profit is opinion. Most companies in our business utilize the income statement as its primary measure of performance. But the problem with using the income statement as your primary measure of success is that there's always going to be a degree of discretion exercised in their creation and also their analysis. And since the last recession, business has changed. Creditors and financial institutions are not as liberal in their lending practices anymore, so we have to raise the bar on how we look at our earnings. Now, many companies in the trade show and event space use a very uncomfortable acronym that has some characteristics of cash flow called EBITDA, EBITDA. And if you are not a finance person, bear with me for a couple of minutes as we discuss some of the potential weaknesses in using net income and EBITDA as a key measure of performance. EBITDA tends to ignore changes in working capital and may overstate cash flow in periods of working capital growth, like AR. EBITDA can be a misleading measure of liquidity, It does not consider the amount of required reinvestment, and this is the most important aspect of growth. And EBITDA also ignores distinctions in the quality of cash flows resulting from different accounting policies. Now, there are companies that are going to defend their earnings measurement until the end of time, but remember, you can be profitable and still go bankrupt. I was introduced to a company out on the East Coast about 5 years ago. It was probably about 12 to $15 million, but they experienced an income statement loss of just under $500,000. And rather than confront the issue and challenge the existing structure, they fired a longtime CPA and brought in a new one that financially engineered a $140,000 gain. And when I asked the owner, why would you do such a thing? He just wanted to pull the money out for himself and not invest it back into his company. Now, the second absolute in managing an EAC, in addition to cash, is the average cost of capital, or your cost to borrow money. And this is the cost of reinvestment to fund labor, sales, your travel, receivables, and other assets required to grow your service business. For example, if you had to make payroll after a large CES labor call and the interest rate on your line of credit was 6%, that would be your cost of capital. So to sum up the performance measurement required to grow your I&D company, we want to make sure that our companies are generating cash at a higher rate than the cost to borrow it. Now, let's break this down and simplify the notion of cash flow. At its most basic level, cash management in the service business can be summed up as the process of analyzing, monitoring, and optimizing the net amounts of cash receipts minus cash expenses. And most companies in the exhibit and event space fail due to poor management of cash. Now, if your service company constantly spends more cash than it earns, you're going to have a cash flow problem. And given the difficulty of a service company, whether it's large or small, to predict its labor calls with 100% accuracy from show to show, it's very difficult to avoid extended cash shortages. Now, having too great a gap between cash outflows, such as payroll and paying your union benefits and getting paid invoices from your clients, that's going to create these cash shortages. And whether you believe it or not, we've all been there. Now, as your sales and marketing efforts gain traction and people find the service in your trade show cities higher than that provided by their existing partner, you're going to gain momentum. And in the services business, and any business for that matter, that experiences rapid expansion, you're going to run into cash flow problems. And as your company grows and you add city managers and administrative employees, there are more costs to cover with that flat profit margin. Now, when I analyze a service partner, I&D company in our business, I look at them more as a finance business than a service provider. And as well-trained and customer service-oriented as a qualified EAC may be, you are really in the finance business. And this is due to the timing of your cash inflows and your outflows. And most EACs in the business only require a partial down payment, if any. However, each week, EACs have to make payroll. Each month, union benefits are paid. And the tough part with this aspect of the business is that you are usually the last ones paid. So your money is going out faster than it's coming in until you get a large lump sum payment when the final invoice is paid. And that lump sum payment includes not only the funds to cover the payments that have already gone out, but it has to cover the continued overhead and profit. So a strong banking relationship is needed to grow quickly in this sector of your industry. Now, whether an EAC's clients are exhibit builders, direct exhibitors, or both, all groups extend their payments to an EAC. Exhibit companies extend payments until they can receive final payment from their clients. And it's unfortunate to do this to the EAC, but this is a practice that's been in place for as long as I can remember, and I'm sure as long as anybody listening can remember. Vendor financing or extended terms is the least expensive form of financing in the trade show and event world, and like it or not, companies will take advantage of that. Now, that said, it's important to understand that when people extend their payment terms, the supplier always ends up paying the price. When an exhibit house or an exhibitor is experiencing cash flow problems, they really don't worry. They just keep squeezing their suppliers. And as I just mentioned, vendor financing is the least expensive form of borrowing around. And this shouldn't be a surprise because exhibit houses or even exhibitors want to keep their cash flowing in even when their finances are tight. So the solution is to have their clients pay as soon as possible and then manage that cash inflow for as long as possible. And if others end up paying the price, so be it. Now, for many businesses in our industry, whether it's exhibit builders, freight companies, or many of the portable modular companies in our business, trade credit is an essential tool for financing growth. Trade credit is the credit extended to companies by suppliers who let you buy now and pay later. And anytime you provide services, take delivery of materials, equipment, or other valuables without paying cash on the spot, you are using trade credit. Now, issuing trade credit by EACs is absolutely impossible to avoid. The extent of the terms and conditions that you provide your customers is a competitive advantage. And you have to ask yourself, do you think you could sell more of these services by providing net 15 terms or net 45 terms? And in my own personal experience working for exhibit builders, I've had net 60 terms extended, and I will tell you that that company received a majority of our work. Now, why do companies push for extended payment terms? There's nothing inherently wrong with issuing trade credit, and in our business, especially the EACs, it's widely used and it's a long established feature of our industry. It's definitely an alternative to bank loans for many of the customers. And for your customers, it's great because they are charged little or no interest, even if the payment is late. Now, for EACs, there is a bright side to providing trade credit to your clients, especially the smaller EACs, because a stable history of providing and successfully managing trade credit will make you more attractive to a lender as far as credit risk is concerned. Now, service companies do have long memories, especially in the I&D and trucking businesses. And I only bring up these two areas because they are usually the last to get paid. There are customers that will take advantage of extended payment terms. And pushing out supplier terms while keeping customer terms in place gives companies free cash to work on their other projects. And even though you specify terms in your agreements with your customers, you're going to find that some will defer payments even further past the agreed terms. And this could be because of efficiencies or out of a misplaced desire to protect their own company. Now, during difficult times like the last recession, the opportunity to win business by extending trade credit is there. Often during these times, there are limited options for exhibit houses. And when times get better and the business improves, EACs can charge a slight premium, or they can refuse to do business with firms that want unreasonable terms. And a history of delinquency will reduce the willingness of an EAC to do business with specific clients who dragged out the payment terms. Now let's explore a couple of or a few reasons why companies don't pay on time. Why companies don't honor the agreed upon payment terms is sometimes understandable, but it does need to be communicated back and forth. It makes it a lot easier to manage and ensure a long-term partnership can remain intact. First reason is the client may have a genuine dispute. And the dispute may be due to labor showing up late, which drives the installation dismantle periods into overtime. The dispute may be due to a damaged graphic panel or even a hanging sign. And sometimes the dispute is not something that the I&D company did, but because a truck came late or electricians didn't show up as requested. So to avoid or at least minimize the negative effect of your team, you need to start on the follow-up process earlier, and this is outlined in the EACA's best practices on collections. And this way you have a better chance of resolving a dispute and getting paid. And using a review process like this can be used to implement change in your company and avoid the same issues that arise over and over. A second reason companies don't pay on time is that clients get busy or they're just disorganized. And given that it is so hard to predict workloads and schedule the exact amount of labor needed, owners and managers of our EACs prioritize their time on customer-facing issues. And many entrepreneurs try to keep their overhead as low as possible, so they take on as many administrative duties as they can. And these companies are under-resourced and always busy. So a timely reminder email, a text, or a letter is usually all you need to get the account paid. And on the bright side, it does present an opportunity for you to provide advisory support and strengthen the relationship with that particular customer. Third reason clients don't pay on time is they just don't have the money. Now, sometimes your clients just don't have the money to pay. If you find this out early, you're definitely in a stronger position to offer a payment program. And for larger projects, breaking down the invoice into smaller amounts, such as on a daily basis, and perhaps billing progressively, it has the same effect as some kind of a payment arrangement. And the difference is that you have to begin the process early. And again, this is all outlined in the EACA's Best Practices Manual on Collections. A fourth reason companies don't pay on time is that they are just unconcerned. Setting up so many projects throughout the year, you're going to run into all kinds of clients. Some of these will be unconcerned with paying. They'll eventually pay, but only on their terms. So when dealing with these types of customers, you have to let them know, and sometimes with strong language, that job completion was your responsibility and that paying on time is their responsibility. Now, the last reason is that clients can be dishonest. And this last group is the worst, and it's the least talked about, because usually one party ends up on the losing side of a business relationship. And sadly, there are dishonest clients in our industry. And despite how these clients are vetted by asking industry colleagues, interviews, scoping, and even having contracts in place, there are people who flat out use dishonesty and cunning as a weapon not to pay their vendors. And it's embarrassing to the company owner who's been duped, so they really don't tend to speak about it very often. Usually when an account hits 120 days, you should start to suspect that the client has no intention of paying. So start the follow-up process early, and when you feel you've exhausted your options, contact a collection agency or an attorney. And foreign clients are definitely the hardest to collect from. Now, processes have to be managed, and whether it's a sales process, a design process, building process, or even the collections process, you have to manage a process. And when it comes to collecting on a service bill, there are two ways in which invoices will be disputed less. First, you should work with your client on an accurate budget prior to the event or trade show, and let them know that you're placing contingencies for all that could go wrong on a show floor. And we know there's so many ways things can go wrong on show floors. Second, you should present the invoice as soon as the work is complete. Your clients can see that the invoice relates to that specific job recently completed, and that the value can generally be reconciled to the job when both are presented near or at the same time. When it comes to busy exhibit managers and exhibit houses, the perception of value delivered declines over time. So the longer you wait, the longer the invoice will undoubtedly encounter some scrutiny from the client. Now, your choice of clients helps in managing your collections process as well. CES is fresh on everybody's mind, so I'll use this show as an example. So many of the exhibits at a big show like CES or IMTS or HIMSS are large exhibits. And most people who own, manage, or work at an exhibit house or EAC love talking about performing the high dollar, heavy design installation work of a large project. And while that work is challenging and satisfying when complete, the process of getting the opportunity to work with a Fortune 100 client is pretty brutal. Large corporations like these not only have extensive exhibit management departments, they also have large and sometimes overbearing purchasing departments that only have one goal, which is to maximize the cash flow of their company, not yours. So many times an exhibit house or EIC will ask, that company is so big and it has so much money, why don't they pay us right away? And like our companies, they are working to maximize their cash as well. Now, the largest exhibitors on the largest shows are hoarding their cash, and that's to create a safety net to protect them against any kind of possible downturn, such as the one we experienced in 2008 and 2009. And additionally, from a purely business perspective, the stock market values companies that generate cash flows from these working capital, and building up cash and extending vendor terms is one way that they do that. Now, from my personal experience, I've even seen an RFP from a corporate exhibitor that stated that their terms were 180 days. And that's a half a year to wait for your payment. And that's when you have to decide if it's even worth it to work for that particular client. Now, many of the businesses in the trade show industry have seen their larger customers stretch their payments from 30 to 60 days or even 90 days after the invoice is issued. The longer the wait, the more the EAC incurs in the form of interest expense, especially if they're borrowing to make payroll. Now, as an EAC, as you add to your client base, begin attracting more qualified workers, and take on larger projects, owners and managers start to get excited about the growth rate. Now, growth is great, but it could also lead to a crisis. And if you don't have enough cash to fund an ever-growing payroll and delayed payment from your customers, your growing pains are going to stem from a lack of cash. And we often forget how growth affects cash flows. Now, when a labor company grows, or another EAC for that matter, the first visible thing that happens is that cash gets tight. And it's very common for an owner, manager, or sales team to see growth only as a positive thing, and that nothing bad can come from it. But when more projects come in and larger projects are won, money can very quickly find its way out the door. Now, if you haven't figured it out yet, growth has a way of absorbing cash. And if your EAC is growing too quickly, it's time to go find some outside capital. And this can come in the form of debt or equity, which means selling part of your company to investors, or some combination of both. Now, as you continue to look at how growth affects your company and its cash flow, start by analyzing your cash conversion cycle. And put simply, it's the amount of time that you're able to convert your I&D labor, your shipping services, your AV rentals into cash from your clients. And banks will look at this measure when determining how large of a line of credit to issue your company. And obviously, the quicker you can convert a project into an invoice and then into cash, the more favorably your lender is going to look upon your business. Now, we have to be able to bridge the gaps with financing. Many EACs have to borrow funds to make payroll and pay monthly union contributions. Then they have to wait a long time until their invoice is paid by the client. So to bridge that gap in time, many could use either a line of credit or accounts receivable financing. And lines of credit are used to pay short-term obligations like payroll, benefit, and other overhead items. It's only used as the need arises. And the benefit of this type of loan is that it's flexible, straightforward, and one that a lender can issue pretty quickly. And in addition, as the EAC pays down the loan's outstanding balance, the lender can replenish the borrower's available credit. Now, the other type of financing is accounts receivable financing, also called factoring or invoice financing, and that's a funding source for companies that may not have access to traditional loans, especially for meeting payroll. Now, an EAC provides a lender with a copy of a client invoice that serves as collateral, and in exchange gives the borrowers cash equal to somewhere between 70 and 90% of that invoice. And the benefit of accounts receivable financing is that they are approved in a very short period of time. And as the EAC receives funds before their funds are due, they're able to make payroll and benefit contributions. Now, those are the topics of my formal presentation. I would welcome any questions from EACA members.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Sorry, it took me a while to get my microphone unmuted for some reason. But yeah, we do have a couple of questions from members that have come to us. The first one was a question about collections and when would you recommend to start using a collection agency?
I think you really have to be concerned when an account hits 90 days, especially if there's been no correspondence from the client. And I would exhaust any and all internal relationships between your EAC and your client company before reaching out to a collection agency, only because collection agencies are for profit and they do exist. But once an account hits 120 days, I would think that is time to reach out to a collection agency. And I know you have arranged a very favorable rate from a preferred vendor, Jim, and I don't know if you want to reiterate that for your members.
Yeah, a couple of things as a footnote to that question is that we, the AACA, does have a relationship with a collections agency. We've formed an affinity partner relationship with them, meaning that our members get discounted rates from this organization. It's NCO Financial, and I'll make sure to post that information to the website as well as to push that out to people that have attended or are listening to this webinar. So that's something that we know is of concern to our members, and that's why we formed that relationship. One of the other sort of follow-on questions about collections, Dan, was that when you do reach out to a collection agency, does that necessarily signal the end of the relationship?
I would say if there's no communication from your client, they are sending that signal to the EAC that it's the end of a relationship. And, I think one way to continue building a relationship, even in times of strained financial capacity, is communication. And, going back and forth, can we get a little bit of money just so we don't have to put you in collections? And a lot of times when a company has a line of credit and that outstanding invoice goes into the net 60, net 90, 120, you can no longer use that collateral in your line of credit.
That's
So
correct.
very, very important to get on the collections process early.
And a great point there made, Dan, that the communication is the key. Certainly, it is about relationship. I know that nobody is desirous of prematurely souring and or ending a relationship, but it depends on the nature of the communication that takes place and whether folks are willing to keep their agreements with you in terms of the monies that are owed. And like you said, Dan, sometimes it might require putting some folks on a payment plan or taking a credit card as a security in the process. But certainly, in terms of the most important part of any business is getting paid for what you do. It's important to stay on top of that, and collection sometimes is a necessary step.
No, and it's the least fun aspect of all of our jobs. But, if a client breaks off communication, they are signaling the end of the relationship.
All
And
right.
the collection agency is always the uh, avenue of last resort.
All right, thanks, Dan. Now, the next question that we had from one of our members was, how and does one best collect from an international client?
Um, it's very, very difficult to enforce payment terms internationally. And going back to what we discussed a few minutes ago in the program, you really have to choose the clients you want to work with. There are most of the clients that you work with, both domestically and internationally, will honor the contract, but every now and again, and it is the minority, there's going to be a client taking advantage of the fact that you cannot go overseas and enforce collections. And sadly, I've heard from some EACs that they've received fake wire transfer documents that says the money will hit their account within 3 days, and all it was a fax document. There was no substance to it. And again, you have to determine which clients are really important. Um, Use your international referral network. We're in a small industry. Reach out to them, ask them if they know this company. And if a company has a history of burning their suppliers, sooner or later, somebody's going to tell you that.
Yeah, and I might suggest too that this is an opportunity to reach out to other folks in our industry that may already have a relationship with an international client that could be new to you. Certainly, the show
Yes,
organizer has a relationship with that company. They're exhibiting in their show. The general service contractor does as well. And in terms of doing some background checking before accepting an assignment for services, might be a good idea to reach out and see what you can find out in those areas.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And last but not least, Dan mentioned this a few times for those that are listening in that the EACA has authored a best practices document on billing and collections. It is posted on the website for those of you that are interested in the About section of our site, but I will also make sure to push out an email to everybody in attendance so that you have a copy of that because there's a lot of helpful information in there about protecting yourself in all of these circumstances and doing the best job possible in managing your cash flow. So with that, let me bring this session to a conclusion. Dan, thank you very much for all of your information and expertise in this area. We greatly appreciate it, and certainly I know that our members do as well. Hope you have a good rest of your week, Dan, and everybody else that is in attendance. Good luck with all your cash flow management efforts going forward.
All right. Thank you to you and your members for the opportunity to share ideas.
Thanks, Dan.
All right. Thank you.